is Janice again with Needles and Fashion. I'm here to give you a quick tutorial on a challenge that I'm working on, which is in a collaboration with fabrics.com. Our first challenge for this week is to make a garment from a Grainline t-shirt pattern and to alter it into something fabulous, change up the fabrics, do something really awesome with it. So I'm going to show you what I will be doing with my particular pattern. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you're going to be doing is taping your pattern pieces together. This Grainline Studio t-shirt pattern is an actual PDF. So I cut out all my pieces and I taped it together. Didn't need this one here. So I have it down. The first thing I'm going to do is make some adjustments. Because the top that I'm going to be making is a fitted top, I made the following adjustments. T-shirts are pretty loose fitting. I can tell that this is a very loose fitting t-shirt. So what I'm going to do instead is measure myself and kind of scale it down to the fit that I want to get. So the first thing I'm going to do is I decided to use the smaller size on this pattern piece. And I decided exactly where I wanted my shirt to stop before I began the peplum. So I measured that area and I made that marking here, which is my line here. The next thing I want to do is create a silhouette for this. So I measured 1.5 inch from the outside seam inwards, 1.5 inch. And what I did was took the bottom of the armhole and connected those 2 points. The next thing I'm going to do is take my French curve and I'm going to raise the collar up 1 inch. So I'm going to measure, make some dots here for 1 inch, and then I'm going to use my French curve to connect these. You know, on t-shirt patterns, the neckline is rather loose. So in order to combat that, I am raising this just 1 inch so I can get a pretty close neckline. I'm going to take my curve ruler here and connect this area. And I'm just going to raise this here and connect it with my original seams. All right, so I got that done. So I have my silhouette, the draping for my silhouette done. I have the length and I have the raising to the actual neck hole. So that is done. I'm going to move over to the front piece. This is the back, this is the front. So I'm going to do the same exact things for the neckline. Take my French curve again and fill that in. Okay, so we got the neck raised there 1 inch. For the front, when I did my waist measurements, I didn't want to make any changes because I am going to put darts in this. So what I did was I left it with the original line. I did measure my length, so I'm just going to make that line. And that is it for the front piece. So what I can do is grab my scissors. So I'm going to start by cutting out the back piece. We're not going to get to the sleeve yet. Okay, so I have my front piece cut. My back. I'm going to go ahead and do the front. There's my front. Now we can move on to doing the back. So I'm going to cut off these pieces right where I cut my front and my back from. That piece there. Now this piece, I'm going to retape this because it's for my neck binding, but we're going to come back to this, to the neck bindings. We're also going to come back to the sleeve. From our tops, we're going to fold that paper over. I'm just going to tape it together. And this is just the bottom shirt part of the t-shirt. You can do it this way, or you can, you know, get some scrap paper. I figured I'd use all this paper that I spent all this time taping together, so I'm gonna use this. All right, so we got that. So what we're gonna do is going to make our template for our peplum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my peplum in one piece, but I'm going to be folding it twice. So what I'm going to do is take my measurement, my waist measurement, which is 29 inches, and it matches the seams and the dart allowance that I have in the front and the top. I mean, for the front and the back. It's 29 inches. Half of 29 inches, 14 and a half. Half of that is 7 1/4. So what I'm going to do is, and what that does is, that gives me enough room to for my peplum to make it around my waist. But also, I'm going to add 1 inch on it just in case I get any fitting issues or need to make some adjustments where I'm going to put my invisible zipper. So 8 1/4 inches is going to be the target. So I'm just going to round this curve out here to 8 1/4 inches. I'm just going to mark that. Both sides. Then I'm going to grab my curve ruler and just round this out. Kind of like how you make a circle skirt. Now I'm going to want my peplum to be 8 inches, but I'm going to add another inch for the hem. So I'm going to make that 9 inches. And you know what? I'm going to keep it at 8. It's a little short, that's fine. So I'm just going to keep it at 8. Just going to make that mark all the way around for 8 inches. Just keep swinging it around. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is going to connect these lines, and I'm going to have the template for my peplum. Alright, so I'm going to reinforce this with some tape because I see a couple different areas of paper that I'm going to be using, so I'm just going to reinforce this really quick. Remember, this represents 1/4 of my waist, 1/4 of my peplum. Alright, so I'm going to cut this out. Fold this on the outside so I can make sure that my circle is even. Oh, and it is. That's great. Just going to cut this part off. Alright. So we have that portion there. So we're done with the bottom side of this. We still have our sleeve and our neck binding over there. I'm just going to trash that. The next thing we're going to do, I am going to take some tape and I'm going to reinforce the upper edge of this peplum. template I'm going to want to use again in the future. So I'm just going to put this tape up here. Alright, so I got that done. Now what I'm going to do is widen this peplum. Alright, so I'm going to widen it in 2 places. I'm going to go right here, which is midway between a half point. I'm going to take this all the way up to almost the edge, which I already have that tape there, so it's not going to come off. And what this is going to do is give me a wider peplum. See that? Isn't that beautiful? And I'm going to do the same over here. If you want it wider, you can cut it in 4 sections. I probably wouldn't go much wider than that. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to lay down some new pieces of paper. I'm just going to tape these together really quickly, or again, you can use craft paper. I have some, but I just don't really feel like bothering it with it right this moment. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're not going to use every inch of this paper. But you do have to have a pretty good coverage of tape. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, I'm going to take my peplum. I'm going to place it down where'd that come from? Okay, so I'm going to place my peplum down. I'm going to spread it out. I'm just going to tape that down. First part, I'm going to just tape down the anchors. And I can spread it some more. All right. That tape down. That tape down. A couple more. Okay, so we got that tape down. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over and we're going to cut out this new widened peplum. And what you're going to notice is the top of the peplum, measurement wise, doesn't change. It just widens the base of the peplum. This is going to give you a nice ruffle to your peplum. So here's the new peplum. So we got the peplum set aside. So we got that. Now we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to start on the actual sleeve. So let me go ahead and prep that for you and we'll be right back. Okay, so now we're on to the sleeve. Sleeve is going to be pretty easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the sleeve by 2 inches all the way around. So actually I'll take my ruler here. I'm just going to mark 2 inches. And I'm just going to follow the natural diagonal of the actual sleeve. And then I'm going to use my curved ruler and attach the other pieces, which just has a slight curve to it. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go ahead and cut this bad boy out. I'll do a quick check real quick. 2 inches. 2 inches, okay. Get lost. Just going to reinforce this area here so it doesn't flap. And we have our sleeve piece. The last thing we have to cut out is our neck binding. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to use it yet, or if I'm going to use it as it is designed in the actual pattern. So first thing I need to do is get my binding pieces together. I'm going to tape these pieces together, and then we'll come back pieces together, which came apart while I was cutting my other pieces out. That's pretty much it for that. Okay, I'm going to cut this neck binding out. Alright, so there's our neck binding. So we're pretty much all done cutting out our patch pieces. So we have our neck binding. We have our adjusted sleeve. We have our front for the shirt. We have our adjusted peplum. And we have the back for our shirt. So we got a lot going on here. What we're going to do next is lay out our fabric and start cutting our pieces out. So we almost forgot about one piece. We need to make an additional peplum for the front of this shirt. So before we start cutting out any patterns, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to take our front piece. We're going to measure from the neck at the center, front, down to the bottom, which is 12¼ inches for me. What I'm going to do is going to make a peplum that is 13¼ to give me some room for my seam allowance on both the top and the bottom. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to draw a C. My C is going to be 8½ inches apart from that. So whatever your length is, you subtract 3¾ inches and you get what your measurement is. So I'm going to measure 8½ inches and I'm going to make my mark. Okay, so that's going to be where my C begins. Now, you're going to want to make a peplum that cascades in size. So you're going to start from the bottom and make it larger as you go to the top. So I'm going to start at 1½ inch. From that line. And I'm just going to connect that. Got my other ruler. So at the beginning of my peplum, it's going to be 1½ inches, right? So what I want to do is grab my French ruler and I'm just going to sketch out a nice C between the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to grab this. And the point of the curve is just so you can give it, so it can have the peplum look that you need. I'm just going to keep sketching until I get a nice shape going on here. And it's something you're going to have to play with. So I got a pretty good curve going on right here. I'm just going to bring that on around. And just keep sketching it till I get a good, even curve. So I'm just going to, you know, keep sketching this. Keep evening out my curve. And just keep playing with lines until I get a shape that I am comfortable with. Once I do that, I can erase the lines that I don't want. And then refine the line that I do. So I have my 1.5 inch mark down here. I'm going to make the top about 6 inches. So I'm going to mark 6 inches above that line. I'm going to connect them. And what I'm going to do is find a midpoint, which is about right here. I'm going to measure out. So I'm starting at 1.5 inch, and I'm going to actually dramatically go up in size. So I'm going to measure about 5 inches from this point. From there, probably do about 4 right here. And I'm just going to sketch this around, just so I can get that larger effect. Okay, so this is what my peplum is going to look like. It's not very pretty right now, but it's a template I can use anytime I create this top. I'm just kind of folding up my lines because I'm going to cut this out next. And you can make your thickness of your peplum any size you want. I'm going 1.5 cascading up to 6 inches. So this is going to be it. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. And this is just 4 pieces of 8.5 by 11 papers taped together. Or this top piece, I'm just going to come out a little bit here just in case I need to make any adjustments after I cut this out. So I'll have this as an extra piece of fabric. All right. So we have that cut. I'm just going to set all these items here aside. Grab some tape so I can reinforce this piece. All right, so we're going to make a real quick Grainline, which is straight down here, and we're going to make 2 of these. All right, so that's done. Now we can get to actually placing out our fabric and cutting out the pieces, so let's do that. So for this part of the tutorial, we're going to start cutting out our pieces. So you're going to lay out your fabric. For the front and the back pieces, it says for you to cut it on the fold, but that is not what we're going to do with this pattern, okay? So because I've already have my seam allowance built into this at 1 inch, I'm going to cut it not on the fold, and we're going to cut my 1 inch side seam down to about 3/4 or 5/8 of an inch. We're going to go ahead and place all of our pieces on the Grainline. Make sure that's lined up. And then we're going to cut these pieces out. I'm going to spare you those details. I'm going to go ahead and cut out these pieces. And then we're going to move on to cutting the peplum. So once we have that, we'll have everything we'll need. We'll have the front, we'll have the back, we'll have the sleeve, we'll have the front peplum, the top peplum, and then we'll have the bottom peplum. So I'm going to cut these pieces, then we'll come back and we'll cut the bottom peplum. Okay, so now we're ready to get into the final cut piece that we're cutting, which is the peplum. So what I did was I took my pattern, my fabric, which is already folded in half, and I took it and I folded in half again. So this gives me 4 layers. I'm going to take my peplum and I'm going to place one edge of it on the fold. Put some weights down. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. It's rather thick. It's going to take me just a little bit. And then I'm going to cut this edge off. And around the side. Alright, so now I have my peplum. I'm going to clean up my edges once I have it serged and finished, and that gives me my pieces. So this is one for the front and one for the back, and as you can see, because of the way that we cut it, it gives the peplum an extra wavy effect, which is exactly what I was looking for. So it's a good thing we went ahead and stretched out the peplum here. So now that we're finished, we're going to go ahead and start the construction. I'm not going to show you every little detail of the construction. I'm going to show you what order I'll be working in, and then I'm going to complete those tasks and show you the output. Alright, so we'll be right back. So in preparation for the construction of this garment, I went ahead and did a couple things. This is my front piece, so I went ahead and serged the center seam of my front. This is the back piece. I went ahead and serged the center seam of this. Set that aside. I went ahead and took the 2 sets of the peplum and I went ahead and sewed the outer part of the C, the edge of the top, the edge of the bottom, and I left about a 3-inch opening here. Well, this one has a 2-inch opening in the middle for me to pull this through. Before I do that, I'm going to clip my corners, and I'm going to trim some areas where there's just more fabric than I would like. Alright, so got that done. Clip my corners up here, at the bottom. Now I can pull this through. And of course I did this with right sides together. And the reason why I sewed the outer portion of the C is because the inner portion is actually going to be a part of my center seam on my front shirt. So I will be able to get away with closing up that hole that I used to pull the fabric through with. So I'm just pulling this all the way out. I'm just going to keep stretching this out with my hand, getting all the way down to the seam. And I know it looks a little weird, but trust me, it's going to be beautiful. I've been thinking on this garment for so long, and I wouldn't do it until I actually mastered this piece. So here you have your C, you have your little hole opening there. And I know it looks weird, but look at this when you stretch it out, which is how it's going to be on your shirt. You get that peplum effect, and this is exactly what we're looking for. So we got that one done. I'm going to go ahead, cut the edges off this piece, get this one squared away, and we'll start measuring where we're going to do our seams on our shirt. So we'll be right back. To see, but I want to show you what is actually being done. I'm working with my front piece now. I've already added my darts, my 1-inch darts to the front pieces. I'm laying them down face sides, right sides up. I'm going to take my finished front peplums. I'm going to lay it down 5/8 of an inch from the bottom. I'm going to lay both pieces. I need to turn it like this. So I'm going to take the edge of this peplum and line it up with the bottom and the edge of the garment. So you can see it here, the bottom and the edge. And I'm going to pin that. I'm going to bring the peplum up some more. I'm going to measure out about 8 inches. And that's going to be the point where I stop pinning my peplum. Alright, so I have that pinned. Now I'm just going to lay the front piece down on top, right sides together, and just line this up. Now I have a really thick center seam, but once we get our seams sewn together, we can do some trimming so that there's no buckling in the front. So I'm going to finish pinning this, take this to the machine, sew it, and show you the outcome. So we'll be right back. So we have our peplum attached in the front. This is how it looks. There's going to be one part of the front that I have to do, which is going to be hand stitch the enclosure in the front. But until then, I went ahead and added facing to both the front and the back to give the neckline a little bit more support, and as opposed to doing the neck binding, because this dress is a lot more dressy than putting that type of neckline on. So what I've done is I put the facing on my back pieces as well, and I'm just going to line up the shoulders and pin them so I can take them over to the machine. And let's put my front sides together. You can see my facing here. I'm just going to pin these. As you can see, this fabric has a lot of fray to it, so I'm saving my, instead of serging beforehand, I'm going to go ahead and serge these as I do each seam. That's going to be for the shoulders, for the side seams, and for the arms. So we're going to go ahead, sew these these shoulder seams, and go ahead and serge these edges, and then I'll be right back and we'll continue on. So I have my front and my back attached at the shoulder seam here. And this is the front of the garment. Here's the back, here is the shoulder seam. Now what I'm doing is pinning my sleeve to this garment. Have it pinned on both sides and here at the middle. I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine, sew around the armholes, serge these, and then we're going to talk about pinning and sewing the side seams. Once we do that, we'll be ready to add the peplum, and then lastly, we'll be ready to add the invisible zipper. I have my sleeves attached. I went ahead and sewn my side seams together. I'm pinning and sewing my side seams. So now we're actually ready to attach the peplum. Fortunate for my peplum, I had 2 pieces, so I do have a center front. And I'm just going to match that with the center front of the top and pin that in place. I'm going to do the same thing all the way around till I get to the back on both sides. I'm going to take that to the machine and I'm going to show you how that looks, and then we'll come back and we'll start prepping for the invisible zipper, and then we'll be done with the exception of hemming the peplum. So we'll be right back. I got my garment constructed. I went ahead and sewed a 5/8 of an inch 5mm stitch all the way down the end of the back seam, center back. And what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and pin my invisible zipper to this garment. I'm just going to pin one side for now, and I'm going to matching up the middle of this zipper with the center seam, and I'm just going to pin down one side. And this is a 22 to 24 inch zipper. Just making sure that my zipper is laying flush to the fabric and just pinning all the way down. I'm going to have this come down to just about 2 or 3 inches above my zipper, excuse me, above the end of the peplum. So that I can step into it. So the bottom 2.5 to 3 inches is seamed with a 2.5mm stitch, so it's going to hold. So I have it pinned, and I'm just going to put a pin where that mark is, so I know where my zipper stop is going to be. So I have that pin. I'm going to take it over to the machine. I'm going to, using my zipper foot, I'm going to stitch all the way down the side of the zipper. I'm going to stitch the other side of the zipper. I'm going to remove my seam, and we're pretty much done. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'll be back to show you what the finished garment looks like.